Welcome back. The big breaking news this evening. 3 hours after a ceasefire was announced, Pakistan has provoked and violated it once again. Pakistan has launched drones and artillery fire in some parts of Jammu and Kashmir, in Kutch, as well as in Gurdaspur. Is the Pakistani army not accepting the ceasefire that was announced by no less than US President Donald Trump? Is the Pakistani army defying the civilian government? Is the army's shelling continues along the LOC, what comes next? What we are now told, and Gaurav Sawant now joins me at the moment. Gaurav, you know more than anyone else on what exactly the army is looking at. We're now being told, Gaurav, army shelling has stopped along the LOC. Now, what was it, about 8:30, 8:45 when the shelling started? There were drone attacks. 4 or 5 blasts reported in Srinagar, no less than Omar Abdullah reported them. But am I to understand we are getting lots of conflicting signals? 3 hours after the ceasefire, Pakistan provoked with the shelling and those drone attacks. Now we are being told the shelling has stopped along the LOC. Could it have been, therefore, as some are suggesting, local commanders who may want to send a final signal before they retreat? Or that the Pakistani army has decided that they are not going to follow the ceasefire? What's the sense you're picking up?
So Rajdeep, if this is the handiwork of local commanders, then these local commanders clearly need to be sacked by General Asim Munir, because they are leading to a severe problem for the Pakistan army. The Indian army is exercising restraint at this time. But had the Indian army responded to ceasefire violations, and they were not just limited to drone sightings, there would have been consequences for the Pakistan army. But you're absolutely right, Rajdeep. The latest information that we're getting on a defense WhatsApp group is yes, drones had come, multiple drones had been spotted, but now it appears largely gone back, confirming. This is the information that I've got from a very senior source in the government.
What does that mean when you say they've gone back? How is it different to what we saw yesterday and day before?
So when yesterday and day before the Pakistani drones came, they came in large swarms, all the way from Leh, Ladakh to Sir Creek. It was something like 500 drones coming in 36 different locations. Right now, they are coming in much smaller numbers, including some that were spotted very close to the Srinagar core headquarters. And that would actually indicate a serious breach in India's security, because if they were neutralized very close to the core headquarters, engaged very close to the core headquarters, it would indicate that they have managed to come all the way in from the LC and come all the way up to Srinagar, Rajdeep. Then some were spotted in the Palawala sector where there was firing. Some were spotted in the Rajasthan and Punjab belt, and some in Gujarat. So either these are local commanders, and it cannot be one local commander. Right. It has to be multiple local commanders over an area, or they're still trying to send out a message: ceasefire, yes, but don't think we are friends. There's no meeting of the minds and clearly no meeting of the hearts between India and Pakistan.
Okay, let's go to our correspondents. They'll tell us what's happening on the ground. Remember, our correspondents have done remarkably in the frontline areas. Just to give you a sense of where they are, they've all been through areas where there's been blackout. They've stuck it out there, not easy in those parts in times like this. Kamaljeet Sandhu joining us, Shivani Sharma joining us. Shivani, you cover the Defense Ministry. What are you picking up? Is there a sign that the shelling has stopped and a genuine sense of some kind of calm at the moment?
Rajdeep, right now in Srinagar, the explosions amid air have stopped. There's no air activity since last 20-25 minutes. But prior to that, around 9, it started, and there were multiple, I can say, I myself witnessed them. There were more than 4 dozens. That these seem to be the similar explosions that are being heard when the drones are neutralized. And similar reports have come from multiple places along the western borders. The blackout still is maintained here, where we are reporting from. And along the LC, there were reports of shelling continuing in the evening, even after the ceasefire was announced. And what we are picking from the sources in the army, the top officials of the army, they say that the LC is calm right now. There is no shelling happening. But certainly there was a ceasefire violation, because this seems actually similar to what was happening yesterday, till yesterday. So there is, we are all awaiting an official response on this kind of activity that has been witnessed late evening today.
Kamaljit Sandhu, tell us what you're picking up. You told us that till about an hour ago there was shelling going on. Has that completely stopped?
Well, Rajdeep, speaking from experience, the shelling does take only 4 minutes or maximum up to an hour or two. And that's the trend that we've seen in the past few days. But let me tell you, what really happened is that as soon after ceasefire was announced, there was a jubilation, people were celebrating, and meanwhile, while we were speaking to people about ceasefire being announced, that's when we actually started hearing loud explosions. This is obviously artillery fire, because the long range is where the artillery is actually brought into by Pakistani army, and that's where the shells actually drop in, not just on military establishment but also the civilian areas. And that is why 3 people were killed today in Rajouri and 3 were injured. But let me tell you, this seems rather serious. It actually does seem that Pakistan is up to some sort of mischief. Let me tell you that Indian army showed extreme restraint, not responding, not giving in and not reacting to that, because remember, after some time these violations did stop, and meanwhile the calm prevails. But this is an uneasy calm. With a neighbor like Pakistan, you really cannot trust whether they actually going to follow the ceasefire or going to violate it. But clearly this has not gone in well, because we also saw multiple drone sightings, not just in Rajouri where we are, but also in several of the other locations, be it Jammu or Srinagar. And this is where there is a larger concern, because these sightings are not just limited to J&K. This is also spread out to
We are also getting
Punjab
reports
and
of
other locations
sightings
as well. So
we are
that
getting
means,
also reports of
Pakistan
sightings in Punjab, in Gujarat, in other parts as well. I'm also joined by Mir Farid, because Mir, we are getting conflicting reports from Srinagar. There were Omar Abdullah suggesting there were 5 to 6 blasts. Now the army suggesting there are no blasts that have taken place in Srinagar. Can you give us the exact situation as it stands?
Well, Rajdeep, these were aerial blasts and in fact, 15 to 20 of them, they were fixed intervals, gaps, but there were blasts, and then there was aerial activity, which of course everyone saw. These guns, air defense guns, opening up and trying to neutralize the threat. But it's quite complex if you look at it and you think about it. The fact that these drones really manage, as Gaurav also pointed out, they've come all the way from POK, covering around 200 kilometers odd, and they have come in unspotted. They have not been engaged anywhere, which is quite surprising. And if that's the case, then obviously it is a massive security breach. How could they come to this point without being engaged, in spite of such a robust
Yeah, but we have to see whether India has chosen. Yeah, but we have to decide. Let's be very clear. We have to decide whether India has chosen for now to hold Pakistan to its word, to see whether these activities that Pakistan is taking, whether they constitute, presumably, Gaurav, some kind of aggressive intent. What is the intent behind what we've seen? The good news at the moment is the army has issued a clear statement saying that the shelling has stopped. Brahma Chelani joins me at this moment. Brahma, good to have you on the show. Tell us how you're reading what's happened over the last few hours. Pretty dramatic. 5 o'clock, Donald Trump tweeting that there's a ceasefire. 6 o'clock, India formally backing that. At 9 o'clock, signs that Pakistan could have violated the ceasefire. A little after 10, signs that maybe, just maybe, Pakistan is perhaps going to have to adhere to the ceasefire conditions, even though these drones also have been spotted. How are you? Are we getting mixed signals, and how do you see that?
This whole ceasefire thing leaves many questions unanswered. First, it's not a ceasefire agreement on paper. It's a ceasefire agreement orally. So we don't know what the conditions are and whether Pakistan will hold its word. And the second thing that is worrying is that this ceasefire framework brokered by the US creates a false equivalence, equating the victim of cross-border terrorism with the perpetrator. There was no effort whatsoever in the US intervention to get Pakistan to agree to dismantle its terrorist infrastructure. But there is a more fundamental question that India had the upper hand militarily. It had the military momentum. And the question that we need to be asking ourselves is, did India snatch defeat from the jaws of victory? Is this a repeat of what happened in 1948 when the Indian Army was marching toward victory and then suddenly we agreed to a ceasefire? Or is...
You answer that question. You see, I'll get Gaurav also to weigh in on that, but you answer that question. Do you believe, and I'm going to ask my producer to keep the sound of those explosions a little low so that we can hear very clearly, but are you saying that we have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory? Isn't that a bit excessive, particularly given that it's just been a few hours? Maybe we don't want to go down an escalatory, we don't want to go up an escalatory spiral. That's as simple as that.
Well, first, in modern world history, I have never come across a very short military campaign. This campaign by India lasted only 3 days. 3 days. In 3 days, no military campaign can achieve any real objective. The Prime Minister laid out what India's objectives were. He publicly laid out those objectives. And in 3 days, we decided to terminate this military campaign without having accomplished any of those objectives. Even though as the stronger side, India was in a position to escalate or de-escalate at a time of its choosing. Yet, we did not bring a superior military power to bear on Pakistan in a way to impose high punitive costs and to ensure an end to Pakistan's proxy warfare. Just when we had degraded Pakistan's air defenses, we had damaged or destroyed some of their key military bases, instead of pressing home that advantage, we decided to hang our boots. Why? Why did we do that?
Okay, why? Let me put that to Gaurav Sawant. Gaurav, you've heard Brahma Chalani rather controversially they're suggesting we've snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. I think defeat and victory are two very strong words here. But what he seems to effectively be suggesting is why the ceasefire? I mean, there are those who are mystified. What suddenly changed in the last 12 hours to go from an aggressive approach towards taking on, retaliating to Pakistan, blasting its air bases, to at 5:30 or 6 in the evening, India saying that we have decided to agree to a ceasefire. What's changed? Why did this happen?
So, Rajdeep, this was a very limited campaign. When the Prime Minister spoke, I'm not defending the government. I'm just trying to make the limited point that I completely agree with Professor Brahmachalani at the onset that India should have pressed home the point. India should have decimated other air bases in Pakistan and, of course, some of their core headquarters. But then we should have been equally ready to then take some pain. If we had, for example, hit the 4 core headquarters in Lahore, they could have hit one of our core headquarters, whether in Srinagar, where they sent across that signal that their drones came pretty close. They could have hit any of our locations in Punjab or in Rajasthan. Are we ready for that? Are we ready for a full-scale escalation right now,
so
when our economy is doing very well? No, my point is we are ready. But have we sent across that message? For the first time in India's history, battling terrorism, you've hit Bahawalpur, you've hit Muridke, you've hit Sialkot. You've sent across that message. Each time Pakistan tried to do something, you were one up. You've hit him on 11 of his military bases. You've actually humiliated the Pakistan army.
Let me turn it around. Let me turn it around. That we had a limited objective.
Yes.
And the limited objective was to send out a signal to Pakistan that if we want, we can come as far as Bahawalpur, Muridke, Lahore. We can come to the heart of Punjab, yes, and we can, we can take the battle there. Having done that, we also know the costs of an escalatory spiral. And therefore, we pulled back. Now, Brahma, maybe that's rationality. Maybe we've chosen a more pragmatic approach. At a time when we want to focus, that we were being led up an escalatory spiral, perhaps some thought by Pakistan, and many believe Pakistan goaded by China, we didn't want to go down that route. That's why we agreed to pull back. We've sent out the message and then pulled back.
A military campaign is a serious operation. There's nothing like demonstration that we can reach Bahawalpur or we can reach Rawalpindi. No military mission is ever launched with such demonstrative objective. In military strategy, you launch a mission with clear objectives. The Indian objective, as laid out by the Prime Minister, was to end Pakistan's proxy warfare. Have we come anywhere close to that? Let us be clear. The Pakistani military generals are going to portray the outcome of Operation Sindoor as a victory for the Pakistani state. Make no mistake about it. They have always looked at India as a weak-willed nation. They have tried to make up the power asymmetry with India through stronger political will. And in the current battle of rival political wills, they will show that they triumphed over India. The narrative in
But
India...
let them, if I may intervene, let them show that. The truth of the matter is we are an economy which is growing. They are an economy which needs to go to the IMF for bailouts. Look, at the end of the day, Brahma, maybe we've taken a conscious choice. Maybe we also wanted to get out of a situation. Maybe the US gave both sides an opportunity to get out of a situation that could have got spiraled out of control. I had Fareed Zakaria on the show last night. He said, look, this could lead to a misadventure or a miscalculation because you can't trust what the Pakistanis will do in desperation. So maybe we've decided, okay, we've sent out a message. This was never intended to be a large-scale military operation.
Well, Rajdeep, there are costs to be paid even if you have superior military power. And India is paying costs already. International investor confidence has been badly shaken. International tourist arrivals to India have come to a stop. And the economic costs, the invisible economic costs of Operation Sindoor will continue for some months. They can't be overnight. You can't change overnight that, okay, today we were fighting, tomorrow we are at peace, and therefore the international investor community can be happy with that situation. Let's be clear about what we were willing to bear with. We were willing to bear with some risks and with some costs. We did call Pakistan's nuclear bluff not once. We did it with Balakot airstrike. We did it with Operation Sindoor. We should have pressed home the advantage that we had secured by degrading Pakistan's air defenses. That left the field open for us to inflict punitive costs on the Pak military. Having done the groundwork to inflict costs, then abruptly we have withdrawn and terminated the campaign. As I said, never before in modern world history.
No, maybe it wasn't as, was it as one-sided as you're suggesting? Because the truth of the matter is, if India sent out a firm message to Pakistan that we can hit you all the way into Punjab, Pakistan also wasn't necessarily taking a step back. And that's the danger, that then you get onto an escalatory spiral, which maybe with China goading Pakistan, could get us into dangerous unknown territory. We hadn't even mobilized the military as yet. So when you say military operation, this wasn't a hot war that was going on. That's my point. We have stopped it at a particular time. I mean, Brahma is calling it a military operation. Yes, Brahma, very quickly, and then Gaurav.
Well, if our intent was to send a demonstrative signal to Pakistan and end this operation in 3 days, we would have been better off had we not undertaken Operation Sindoor. Would have been much better for us economically and diplomatically had we not pressed ahead with Operation Sindoor. But once you launched it, once you launched a military mission, you had to take it to its logical conclusion. Terminating it.
No, but
maybe what was the end game? You see, I'm not able to. What was the end game? I don't think we had a clear end game in mind because the Pakistanis were provoking us night after night. We were retaliating, but there was no end game after the initial targeting of Muridke and Bahawalpur. That's my point. You were not getting into you didn't want to get into a warlike situation.
So there are two things.
So where is victory and defeat here?
No, so there is victory in every which way. You've decimated his air defenses. You've targeted 11 of his points. But if I may, Professor Chilani, and I completely agree with you on all your points. My limited point is there are other ways to carry out punitive strikes against Pakistan, and especially the Indus Waters Treaty that will still be kept in abeyance. Now, that is one big stick that we will continue to wield against Pakistan as a middle riparian state. We will give them water in terms of without information. I know we cannot stop it, but we'll start development project that will continue to help us build more electricity, get more electricity out of it, harness that more for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Okay. There are long-term steps that we will continue to take to deter Pakistan, is my understanding of the situation.
So you don't think you don't agree with Brahma's basic premise that we have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory?
Personally, I completely agree with him in terms of we should have continued to hit till the time Pakistan is actually Pakistan submits, to accepting defeat.
Okay,
however, if we have to remain on the path to becoming the third largest economy, we will have to prioritize, and we may have to prioritize now, because otherwise China will have the advantage, which I would never want China to have that advantage.
Before I go to the other guest, one final word from you, Brahma. I had Fareed Zakaria on my program who made an important point. We are the larger country. We have much more at stake. We are an economy on the up. Pakistan is a basket case. The military there needs legitimacy. In the asymmetry of power, we were well ahead of them. But therefore, countries when they have the moral advantage also need to take a strategic call. And maybe India, with a bit of help or nudge from America, took that call. I mean, why call it victory and defeat? Why not just simply say that India took a considered strategic call?
India, under successive governments, has had a tendency to adopt half-pregnant approaches.
True.
Biologically, there's nothing like half-pregnancy. But India has, under successive governments, believed in half-pregnant approaches. And you have seen this now. First, the Indus Waters Treaty. International law is clear. If one party consistently violates it, or there's a fundamental change of circumstances, the other side can suspend or withdraw from the treaty. India chose neither to suspend nor withdraw from the treaty. Instead, it has kept the treaty in abeyance, a term not defined in international law. In other words, again, a half-pregnant approach. Operation Sindoor will also go down in history as a half-pregnant approach of India.
Okay, you've called it a half-pregnant approach, controversial, contentious, Brahma. Professor Brahma Chelani, appreciate you joining us at this moment. We're getting breaking news at the moment that while shelling has stopped at the LOC, drones have been spotted in Gujarat, and Omar Abdullah has said air defense systems are on alert in Srinagar. So India taking no chances. The Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir also asking the question, what happened to the ceasefire? And that's a question many are asking tonight, because there are mixed signals that have come from Pakistan. The shelling has stopped. Clearly, the intensity of the drone attacks have not been quite like what they were yesterday. But having said that, they continue. And any such drone attack or shelling is a violation of the ceasefire agreement that was signed only 3 hours ago. There's a blackout in Amritsar, India taking no chances. And therefore, we will have to wait for several hours before we know whether Pakistan is genuinely acting on its commitment to that ceasefire or not. Let's get in more voices. Einar Tangen, American-Chinese political analyst, is joining us from Beijing. Always good to have you, Einar, on the show. K.C. Singh, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs with us. Daniel Block, Senior Editor, Foreign Affairs Magazine and contributing editor, The Washington Monthly, joining us. Thank you all very much for being on the show at the moment. Aina, let me get you in, because, there is this Chinese angle that's been coming in, that China in some way was goading Pakistan into this confrontation with India. How do you think the Chinese will now look at the US announcing a ceasefire between India and Pakistan?
Well, Beijing is delighted, of course, that instead of fighting, that you have a ceasefire. It's the consistent picture that the consistent message that they have had. It doesn't matter who announces it. If Donald Trump wants to take credit, that doesn't matter as long as it saves lives. Been listening to Professor Chilani, who, as usual, has the facts according to himself and he believes that for some reason there was some larger aim that could have been accomplished. I think Fareed Zakaria was correct that you do not want to lead to a situation where you would risk a nuclear war. It's time to put the deaths away, not have old men sitting in their offices who have no exposure to being killed, talking about end games, etc.
KC Singh, is that your view as well? That eventually an element of pragmatism has prevailed, or are we seeing in some of the violations in the last 2 hours that we just can't trust Pakistan? It'll have to walk the talk in the next 24 hours before we believe them?
Rajdeep, you trust no country. Ultimately, even your friends, we have seen how Bangladesh has gone. So ultimately, it's pragmatism. Diplomacy is about dealing with reality. I don't buy the Brahmachalani argument that you could have taken to multiple other levels with Pakistan until General Murir would have come on his knees and begged for forgiveness. It doesn't work like that. Russians with nuclear weapons have not been able to bring Ukraine to its knees. Countries don't come to their knees just because you apply military force. And certainly Pakistan is not Ukraine. They have nuclear weapons. And they've been using nuclear blackmail to continue with supporting terrorism against India. I think what the current operation has done, Sindoor has done, is we've broken that old hesitation that you did not cross certain lines, you didn't go into Punjab, you don't go after the headquarters of LET and JAM because you would escalate to a point where nuclear weapons come into play. I think we've broken that nexus. And the other thing is, what Gaurav was just now saying, we've introduced the weapon of river waters. You see, in the past, when we sat down with Pakistan, whether it was the comprehensive dialogue, Kashmir was on the table. And the problem would arise because Pakistan will get impatient because they were not getting what they wanted. And they will either not accept trade, not pick up low-hanging fruit, or allow terrorism again to hit us. But this time, when you sit down, it is terrorism and waters on the table. It is not Kashmir. But the problem is not that. The problem is the conflicting statements that are coming out. Marco Rubio is saying that they have mediated and the two countries will be meeting in a neutral spot to discuss a range of issues. Shahbaz Sharif, in a tweet about 2 hours ago, has thanked Americans profusely. And he has said, we've accepted what implying the Americans wanted because of regional stability. Now, the statement coming out of Delhi is, we were in touch with Pakistan. Well, I didn't see whom they were in touch with, other than the Deputy Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia coming here, and then also going to Islamabad, which is not direct contact. There was no evidence of any direct contact. And that we gave no commitment. Now, here straight away, there's a very serious conflict. The Pakistanis are expecting what the Americans have said. And we are saying that is not a condition. So you're having straight away a conflict, which can undermine the ceasefire tomorrow.
And we don't have a formal ceasefire in any case on paper. And it's very different to what happened in Kargil, where Nawaz Sharif, Bill Clinton signed on an agreement. This has just been first tweeted out with no processes being followed by Donald Trump as usual. Daniel Block, how are you interpreting it? Have the Americans jumped the gun? And Donald Trump tweeting the belief that there is a ceasefire on the ground. We are seeing ceasefire violations. Has America put its full weight behind this ceasefire? And what changed? 24 hours ago, we thought Americans had washed their hands of it, or so J.D. Vance seemed to indicate. Something seems to have changed, Daniel.
We're seeing reports that there was intelligence coming to the United States government that alarmed them about the nature of the conflict and pushed U.S. officials to get more involved. What that intelligence is, whether there was actually intelligence, we don't know yet. But in some ways, there didn't need to be new intelligence to really push the United States to become more involved. I think they saw what most people saw, which is that you had tit-for-tat attacks between two nuclear-armed powers. contrary to what some of the previous guests were saying, it did not appear from the Americans' perspective to be a kind of one-sided spanking. It appeared to be that both sides were able to inflict some damage to the other, and there was concern that things would escalate. And you're talking about two nuclear-armed states here, India and Pakistan. So it's very difficult for one country to establish escalation dominance over another country when both of those countries have nuclear weapons. So if you see this happening, you watch escalation taking off, you're anywhere in the world, I think you want to get involved and you want to try and stop that process. And so from that perspective, it would make sense that the United States would come in and play its traditional role of mediating between the two powers. And whether or not they jump the gun, I mean, we'll find out. It wasn't only the United States that announced there was a ceasefire. India said that there was a ceasefire of some kind as well. The same with Pakistan. So what's happening now, whether this is just kind of the last throes of fighting or whether there's actual serious commitment to keep fighting to break the ceasefire, we don't quite know. But we're going to hope that this is the end.
You know, there's an important point that the Americans are making. And you look at what the State Department said yesterday. They wanted an end to this, what they call tit for tat.
Okay.
Gaurav, you're saying, you know, the Pakistanis got a bloody nose. Their air bases were targeted. Global opinion is saying both sides suffered. Okay. And therefore, there was a need. And the Americans feared that if you went up the escalatory spiral between two nuclear neighbors, as Fareed Zakaria pointed out, there could be a misadventure, miscalculation. We don't want that. Something changed. The Americans moved in. Now, Donald Trump is almost taking credit, you know, in his tweets. How is the Indian government seeing? You're talking to people in government, in army. How are they seeing this? Are they seeing this as some kind of a pull back? Just when you were, as Brahma said, you know, that we were about to take the operations to another level. Now you've been told a ceasefire. Will they see that as a pause button being pressed on their operations? And I want to ask you, Gaurav, the terrorists have still not been caught.
Sure.
The terrorists responsible for Pahalgam have not been caught. Yes, we've struck at infrastructure in Muridke and Bahawalpur. We don't know the extent of damage. But the truth of the matter is, what have we gained from Operation Sindoor?
One, you've avenged the deaths of 25 Indians, 26 in all, if you can take the Nepali. You, for the first time, you know, all this bogey about
how have we avenged the deaths of those, the three, four, however many there were, are still at large.
3, 4, 6, I'm sure that effort is on. But you've hit Bahawalpur, you've hit Muridke. In the past, it was said that if you hit Bahawalpur and Muridke, there will be nuclear war. I'm not sure.
We've called out that bluff.
We've called out that bluff, and we haven't just hit Bahawalpur and Muridke. We've hit Pakistan at Rawalpindi. I'm sorry, that's never happened before. When you've hit them in Rawalpindi, their Noor Khan Air Base. You've hit them in Lahore. You've hit them in Rahim Yar Khan. You've hit them in Skardu. And you know, can you imagine two nuclear weapon states?
Having done that within 48 hours, as Daniel was pointing out, we've agreed to a ceasefire rather quickly. So was it a situation where both sides were looking for an exit route and the Americans gave us an exit route?
So, look, India's made that point. India every day said our point was hit Bahawalpur, hit Muridke. That was our aim done. If Pakistan had not escalated, we would not have done anything. Pakistan escalated, so we went and hit them. We took out their air defense systems as the Indian Air Force took out their air defense systems. They escalated again. Then we went and hit them at 11 bases. A nuclear weapon state has 11 air bases hit. And there is no escalation, Rajdeep.
But both sides agreed to the ceasefire.
Yes, I did.
Both sides agreed rather readily to the ceasefire. I just wonder whether both sides had boxed. The Pakistanis got their IMF bailout loan yesterday. Let me tell you one chronology.
Sure.
The Pakistanis got their bailout loan. India abstained, but the rest of the world agreed to it. 24 hours later...
On the condition, I'm told by our sources, that only if Pakistan backs off will they get that loan.
Okay.
That was contingent to that.
So that was so Pakistan sort of struck their own deal in a way with the Americans.
They struck their own deal.
And we agreed.
And that they will not let their territory be used for terror. We will wait.
Okay, the big news coming at the moment, China has spoken out after the ceasefire. We will stand by Pakistan to uphold its sovereignty. China's comments come after the Chinese foreign minister, we are told, has spoken to the Pakistani leadership and has said China will stand by and uphold sovereignty of Pakistan. Now, we know, Ainga, that, that this is the way China has always been. They've always treated Pakistan almost as an all-weather friend. How are you seeing these comments, I know, that are being made, that we are getting in at the moment from Beijing? A telephonic conversation with Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar and Wang Yi, according to a statement by the Foreign Office. How do you see this, Aina? Is this in line with how China perceives it? They've been very pro-Pakistan. Some have even called Pakistan almost contemptuously a vassal state of Beijing.
Well, I mean, there are always people who are going to make up names and things like that. But the fact is, you have some semblance of peace. I think that is something that should be the focus of this particular program. And going forward, as you rightly pointed out, tit for tat had no end game. So this idea that somehow, one side or the other side is winning is pointless. China is simply reiterating the fact that it stands by Pakistan as it has before, because you do not want a nuclear armed country, believing that it's been painted into a corner and has no other alternative but to use a weapon that would be unthinkable.
So you don't go along at all with the theory that China was using this to in some way create instability in the subcontinent, goading Pakistan to escalate the conflict at a time when China itself is under pressure from the United States over tariffs?
It's incredible to believe that anybody thinks that China is trying to escalate things when they're trying to de-escalate things. I mean, China's interests are having a peaceful world, not one in which you have conflict in the area from which it would be affected. I mean, this idea is just nonsense. China has not instigated anything. They have been calling consistently for peace. They've been working behind the scenes to make sure that Pakistan realizes that there's no end game in this, that there has to be a real investigation, and those individuals or organizations who are responsible for this.
Mr. Tangen, if I may, China should be the last country to preach. China was the country that blocked sanctions against the Maulana of terror called Masood Azhar after he was found involved in that IC-814 hijack, the attack on Indian Parliament in Pathankot and in Pulwama, and several other terror attacks. And there were investigations and there were FIRs that were filed, and China blocked sanctions in the 1267 Sanctions Committee. So, China does not practice what it preaches. And if China wants peace, then China should stop arming Pakistan with the PL-15 long-range air-to-air missiles and a lot of military hardware that will encourage peace in this region.
Your belief that somehow every country should bow down to India's desire and that there's only one narrative is naive.
If Jaish-e-Mohammed is not a terrorist organization, and if that is not the narrative that China buys, Mr. Tangen, then I think there is a problem. Or maybe then we should start thinking that East Turkestan Islamic movement is not a terrorist organization that you think, sir.
Well, this is not about what I think. It's about what the Chinese government think. I'm not Chinese. I'm an American. Contrary to what was said earlier, I'm not even Chinese. I'm half Korean.
American Chinese.
The fact is that you have a situation where you want peace in this area. The SCO, which China invited, the entire organization invited both Pakistan and India, was to prevent situations like this. This idea that it's one-sided, where is the condemnation for what has been taking place in Balochistan from India's perspective? There's not a one-way telescope into what is happening in a very, very complex relationship over a contentious area such as, Kashmir. So at this point, the only thing that China would like is for both sides to figure out how they can remain at peace, stop the killing. And if you're not for that, I can understand, but you're in essence saying that you approve of more deaths, escalatory effects that take on no interest. They accomplish nothing except more bloodshed, which prevents more peace. So if you believe that India needs to take stronger action, towards what end?
Okay, we'll this is, the Chinese factor is an important factor. KC Singh, you are hearing various views. I just want to understand the central question I've raised today. As lights are restored in Srinagar, no blackout now, so some good news, shelling stopping along the LOC. The simple question, what have we achieved from Operation Sindoor? I'm going to, really keep asking this because this has been a week where we've seen so many dramatic developments, and I step back and ask myself, what have we achieved at the end of the day? Pakistan's got its IMF loan. The terrorists responsible for Pahalgam not caught. On the other hand, India has blasted terror infrastructure in Muridke and Bahawalpur, sent a firm signal, and as we saw with those funerals, clearly Pakistan terrorists were hit. I'm trying to, if we had to do a balance sheet, pluses and minuses, how do you see it? What have we achieved? Or is it, dare I use the word, a draw?
Well, what we've achieved is, number one, we called the nuclear bluff, because till now that was always a factor which India considered when expanding the retaliation against Pakistan. We never had, farthest we went was Balakot, but certainly nobody till now thought of going after the headquarters of LET and Jaish-e-Mohammed. So that is the one gain, that Pakistan has been told that we are ready and willing to hit the terrorists in Pakistan anywhere if you escalate terrorism against us, and they cannot hide behind charitable organizations, schools, hospitals, Pakistani military, and we will come after them. That is number one. Number two is, I think river waters came in. We were always reluctant to put the Indus Waters Treaty. We've been complaining about it. We've been saying we need a review, but we've never used river waters as a weapon. So for the first time, by stopping the flow in Jhelum and Chenab, then flooding, although we cannot completely stop it with the kind of dams that we have, but we can certainly play around with the water and create disruption. So that's given us one instrument to negotiate with Pakistan, because they always used to say, we can stop terrorism. Terrorism will stop. They will not say they will stop. If Kashmir is settled, what they meant is we control the terrorist organizations once you give us what we want in Kashmir. Now it's a question of saying, okay, we will discuss water with you and you start controlling terrorism. Otherwise, we'll control the water. It's a new weapon which has come on the table. And I think that for that, we need to talk. There have to be discussions, back channel or whatever. So we have a reluctance to say, I have very clearly what I told you in the beginning, Americans have given a commitment to Pakistan that there will be some talks. I have a feeling they probably did the same in case of Imran Khan in 2019. But then subsequently, you know where history went. Imran Khan went off and ultimately in the jail because the Pakistani army realized he had gone rogue, not listening to them. But third thing, which is not exactly visible, I think we may have unleashed domestic forces in Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif has come back to Pakistan. The Pakistani army doesn't like him. He was present at the house of his younger brother when the meeting took place. He's the one who tweeted and said, yes, I've told my brother to settle this. He has been the back channel. Now, Nawaz Sharif being there will be pressure on General Munir. Can he continue? I heard Vivek Karju talk about earlier that no army chief has been thrown out. But these are new times. No army chief
with the exception of Yahya Khan. With the exception of Yahya Khan.
Yeah, but India has also never attacked Pakistani facilities. So therefore, General Munir will be answerable to his core commanders to say, you made us vulnerable. You have not gained anything, but India has at last got over its hesitation to go beyond LOC and come after us elsewhere in India, elsewhere in Pakistan. Therefore, you have made us vulnerable.
Punjab.
I think this will start a debate in Pakistan, which may lead to Imran Khan's release, which may allow even Nawaz Sharif to play a greater role. But I think Shahbaz Sharif is going to suffer in this because he's been used by the Pakistani army by allowing the DGISI to become the National Security Advisor, you've allowed the army to sit in the Pakistani cabinet. What was known is now made obvious. So therefore, he's a puppet. He's a total puppet. And
Okay.
let me tell you one story. When I was ambassador in Abu Dhabi, the Pakistani ambassador there happened to be a former aide to Nawaz Sharif. This is before the military coup by Musharraf. And he told me after he lost his job and the coup took place, he says the night Nawaz Sharif took the decision to not allow Musharraf's plane to land and to appoint a new army chief, Shahbaz and this aide were in the residence of Nawaz Sharif, sleeping there. Nawaz never took them into confidence because Nawaz's family told him, your brother is in league with the army. So when he was sacking the army chief, and that is why Shahbaz never went to jail. Nawaz was thing. So there'll be a certain conflict in the Sharif family,
as you say,
which will surface.
There are wheels within wheels in a country called Pakistan. I want to give a final word here to Daniel at the moment, even while just reporting that the Vikram Misri, Foreign Secretary, likely to brief the media. Remember, the last briefing was at 6. We expect one any time now. Daniel, in conclusion, the Americans itself, will they see themselves playing a greater role in a region where in recent times, very clearly, they want a strategic partnership with India and they've increasingly sort of distanced themselves from Pakistan? Has that all changed? Is America hyphenating Pakistan and India once again?
I think that the United States is going to have to play a bigger role, or at least pay more attention to India-Pakistan tensions. This is obviously not something the United States wanted to do. It was hoping, and I'd add, I think that this was true for India as well. There was a hope that actually India's focus could be on China. I think that was shared between Washington and Delhi. I think it was part of the foundations for their stronger relationship. But if we're seeing a real escalation here that's going to last beyond this conflict, if there's going to be more scuffles, more tension between India and Pakistan going forward, then the United States, no matter what it wants, is probably going to have no choice but to remain more involved in this conflict, if only because it's one of the few countries that can still help mediate between the two. That's been its traditional role. It seems like it's a role it's played again this time. We don't know the full extent. Other countries were also involved in trying to mediate. But it also might mean that after several years of moving away from Pakistan and toward India, the United States will want to warm up to some extent its ties and relations with Pakistan, simply since it can sit in this kind of mediating relationship.
The word mediation was used, of course, in that statement. Meanwhile, the big news, NSA Ajit Doval has spoken to the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. So it's no longer the Chinese Foreign Minister speaking to the Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan, Ishaq Dar. He's also spoken now to NSA Ajit Doval. And there's a full China statement now coming on. The 10th of May 2025, Wang Yi, member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Director of the Office of Central Commission for Foreign Affairs, held a phone conversation with Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Doval stated that the Pahalgam terrorist attack had caused significant casualties among Indian personnel and that India needed to take counter-terrorism actions. He emphasized that war is not India's choice and does not serve the interests of any party. Both India and Pakistan are committed to maintaining the ceasefire and hope for the early restoration of regional peace and stability. Wang Yi expressed China's condemnation of the Pahalgam terrorist attack and its opposition to all forms of terrorism. He noted that given the current complex and volatile international situation, peace and stability in Asia, hard won, should be cherished. India and Pakistan are neighboring countries that cannot be relocated. Both are also neighbors of China. China appreciates Doval's statement that war is not India's choice, sincerely hopes that both sides remain calm, exercise restraint, resolve differences through dialogue and consultations, avoid further escalation. China supports and looks forward to India and Pakistan achieving a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire through negotiations, which is in the fundamental interests of both countries, the shared aspirations of the international community. So China playing the role of statesman. Thanks to all my guests who've joined me. But that's very interesting. Gaurav and I are going to chat for the last 5 minutes of that. Gaurav, for the last 72 hours, Gaurav and I have been anchoring some of these shows. As we now come to hopefully and maybe a de-escalation, certainly. We don't know whether it's a full ceasefire as yet. I want your 2 or 3 big takeaways, Gaurav. Give me your 3 biggest takeaways, and then I'll give you mine. But the 3 biggest takeaways.
Point 1, India hit terror at source. Rajdeep, you and I have covered terror and counter-terror operations for decades. 1993 blasts, you've covered that. 12 places, 257 people killed. We've covered 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, 2006 train tragedies. We've lost thousands of lives in Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror. This is the first time terror has been hit at source, because we kept lamenting that we are pruning branches and leaves of terror tree and not striking at roots. India struck at roots of the terror tree. Muridke, Bahawalpur, Sialkot, Pakistan's Punjab province is no longer off bounds. It's no longer out of bounds. You've hit them at source, but not just terrorists. You've even hit the protectors of terrorism at source. Rawalpindi has been hit. Lahore has been hit. Muridke has been hit. Bahawalpur has been hit. There's a core headquarters in Bahawalpur. There's a core headquarters in Lahore. Skardu has been hit. And China would be very worried. Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including northern areas, are directly in the line of India's fire, and nobody can do anything about it. We can strike again. Remember, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has been hit. This will embolden forces of freedom in Pakistan. So Baluchistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the Afghans are rejoicing. Pakistan will be in trouble in Peshawar. Now, I am not saying that we would love a peaceful Pakistan, but we cannot have Pakistan that will have no cost when it uses terror as an instrument of state policy. Their armed forces have been weakened, not decimated, but weakened. Should we have destroyed their air force? Yes, we would have taken some hits. Ultimately, we would have destroyed it, but we would have taken some missile hits. That would have actually adversely impacted our effort to become the 3rd largest economy. So you've done the best thing possible for now. Indus Waters Treaty is a big gain for the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of the country, short term, medium term. So Rajdeep, there are many, many gains in what we've done.
Okay, so Gaurav believes that there have been strong messages that have been sent out to Pakistan in the last week. For me, in a sense, there's a sense of deja vu, because this is an area which I've often said is one of the most dangerous places on earth. I've said it for the longest time, that between 2 nuclear neighbors, particularly because of the nature of the Pakistani army state. And that is something that one has seen time and again. False dawns, signals coming out of Pakistan that they want to reach out to you, have a dialogue, and then you have terror striking, or you have the Pakistani army state doing operations like Kargil. And therefore, there is a lack of trust. I think what the last week has shown is just how easily 2 nuclear neighbors can spiral up this escalatory ladder and then not know quite how to dismount. And that's exactly what happened, because I think at the end of the day, that's what required American mediation to get the 2 countries to find an exit route. And I think therein lie the dangers. And purely from an Indian perspective, I think we have to realize Pakistan economically, and they got a bailout yesterday from the IMF, has been a bit of a basket case. You could say more of a basket case than even a bit of a basket case. India, on the other hand, is a country on a high growth trajectory, on its way to becoming the 3rd largest economy in the world, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Our focus should be at the moment to use the sweet spot that we are in to take ourselves to another level. The last thing we need is to get into this battle with Pakistan to the point of no return. And Pakistan uses every terror attack to do so. I know that the doctrine today says that every terror attack will be treated as an act of war. Now, to my mind, and this is where Gaurav and I will probably differ, that's a dangerous approach to take, unless we are clear of the end game.
Oh, absolutely.
Are we clear? You see, where I differ from Gaurav is Operation Sindoor. Yes, you've struck Bahawalpur, you've struck Muridke. Having done that, did you have an end game in mind?
Yes.
Did you actually, if you had an end game, well, you haven't achieved that end game. What you've done is you've taken your first steps and then pulled back. And I think clearly when you're entering into this very, very turbulent, dangerous space when it comes to dealing with Pakistan, because it's unpredictable, it can be a rogue state. We've seen those pictures of Pakistani generals mourning at the funeral of terrorists. I think in that sense, Pakistan has been exposed yet again. It really shows to me, I think, that we need to navigate this very carefully and cautiously in the future.
Right.
I believe there should be no chest thumping.